Well, it's a pleasure speaking with Kenny Wayne Shepherd. Kenny is coming to Virginia Beach at the Sandler Center, and that is going to be an awesome show on Tuesday, October 10th. I've seen you a number of times. In fact, I actually was lucky enough to shoot one of your shows last time you were here, just cranking away on the guitar there. It's one of my favorite concert photos, and you're going to probably end up on my wall. I just haven't done it lately. I have Buddy Guy, who you played with. He's on my wall.
Okay, yeah.
Because I got to shoot him a couple of times. But what was it like touring with a legend like that?
You know, to be honest with you, well, first of all, to answer your question, incredible. I mean, Buddy's one of the best ever. I mean, you know, this is a guy that can say that he was an influence on Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? Jimi Hendrix looked up to Buddy Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's just one of the most electrifying entertainers, guitar players to ever pick up the instrument. But I've been really fortunate in my career, man. I've really gotten to play with a lot of legends and, you know, tour with them, jam with them, make music with them. And, you know, I mean, it's a long list and I'm really proud of that. But, you know, playing with Buddy, I mean, the thing that's really incredible about him nowadays is like, you know, at his age, what he's still able to do is remarkable, you know?
Yeah, I've seen him. It's like I don't realize he's as old as he is because he does not act like it on stage. This dude's just wailing away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, it's just, you know, whatever he's doing or whatever health, you know, training or whatever he's doing, it's freaking amazing because you know, not many people can do that. Even you know, he's younger, you know, just and watching him do that, it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I hope I have half the energy that he has if I live to be that age.
Did you ask him what his secret was, or?
No, not really. No, I haven't asked him. Maybe next time when I see him, I'll ask him.
Awesome. Well, you just did some recording, so you have a new album coming out called "Dirt on My Diamonds" Volume 1 on November 17th. I did get to preview the album, so I do want to talk about some of the tracks on it.
Okay.
And was this recorded in Muscle Shoals?
So it was written in Muscle Shoals.
Okay.
For the most part. We went down and we spent a few days in the Fame recording studio, and you know, we had a bunch of guys down there. We just wrote a bunch of songs that ended up becoming this record. We didn't have time to make the album down there, but the plan for the next album is to record a record down there.
Is that the Volume 2 that we're going to get?
Well, Volume 2 is already done. So
okay.
It's ready to go. So we're just waiting to see when the right time to release it is. I mean, you know, my normal pattern is to put out a record and tour for about 2 years and then put out another record. But I think we'll come sooner with Volume 2. So maybe this time next year, we'll be talking about Volume 2 getting ready to come out. But, you know, I'm still trying to stay ahead of schedule here. So my plan is this winter to get together with everybody and to go in the studio and make another record. So that'll be ready to go when the time comes for it.
Wow. And I know you kick off your tour tomorrow. And so are you going to be playing tracks from the new album that's not even out yet? Is that the plan?
The goal is to play. So we released Sweet and Low. Like we started releasing one single each month leading up to the album release, which is November 17th. So last month we released Sweet and Low. At the end of this week, we're going to release Best of Times. And then I think we got another one next month called You Can't Love Me. And then I think when the album drops, we'll release the title track, Dirt on My Diamonds. But yeah, the goal is to play some of these songs live, but we're still working them up, you know, because what people don't realize is you go in to make a record in the studio, most of the time you make an album and then it takes several to many months sometimes between the recording of the record to the release of the record, and then you haven't really played the stuff in between. So you kind of have to go back and relearn it and rehearse it and, you know, get it sounding good before you go out on stage and play it for everybody.
Yeah, because I guess listening to the album, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of overdubs on there. Although, did I hear horns? Are there horns on the album?
Yeah, there's horns, yeah. Okay. Yeah, starting on the last record, The Traveler, I started using horns on a lot of the songs, almost all the songs. Then we had horns out with us on the road for a couple years, and right now we don't. So I'm trying to decide if we just have my keyboard player, you know, play the horn parts on a keyboard that sounds like horns, or if we bring another horn section back out. I haven't really made up my mind. For this run, we're not going to have the horns, but I'm looking at whether or not I should get a horn section together for the tour next year.
Yeah, it definitely had that like Louisiana, kind of like New Orleans, Alabama, kind of like feel when I was listening to it, especially like the opening track, the title track from that. And it was just,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of had that vibe in there, man. Just,
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, that's where I'm from. I'm from the South, and all this music and all these different genres. Grew up listening to all kinds of music, and they've all found their way into the music that I create. And my goal from day one has always been to take the blues, which was kind of my favorite and biggest influence musically, and try and take it into new directions, and continue to, like, I don't know, push it into the modern era. And I think there's a lot of songs on this record that are representative of that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the blues. "Ease of My Mind." I know the album's closing track was definitely had that like bluesy
Yeah.
feel kind of going on. Is that was like some guys always do with that epic track, at the end of the album and something. I know it's like the longest track, but man, damn, the blues on that, man. I mean, definitely is the most bluesy song on that album. It sounds so good.
Thanks. I mean, we've done a couple of albums over the years that are just straight up blues and traditional blues. But when we're going for more contemporary sounding stuff, I generally try and squeeze at least one that's just like, the straight up blues thing that I think people have come to expect to hear from me, and that one certainly fit the record and fit the vibe.
Yeah, I will say, because I played the album louder than I usually listen to music in here. It's an album you do have to crank up, I will say, but it just sounds so clean. I mean, just production wise. I mean, how many guys at one time? And I've seen your band, and I know that, like, the keyboard player's been with you for a couple of years and stuff. But like, how many of those guys were all at one time doing this? In the studio?
Well, yeah. So the way I make records the old-fashioned way, so I try and do the least amount of overdubs possible. We all get together in a room together and play, and we try and keep as much of that as possible. So, and then do the least amount of overdubs possible. So it sounds like a live performance, really, because that's the essence of like what we do best is the live performance. We make records so we can play concerts, because that's where we really, I think, connect the best with the fans. And so I feel like my goal has always been to capture that sound of a live performance in the studio as best as possible.
It sounds very alive. I mean, you don't get that with much rock. I mean, current rock, in some ways, I mean, some bands have that, but then there's some where there's a lot of post-production work going on, or something underneath. But you guys have a pretty clean sound. By the way, please don't take that. If anybody's watching this and I'm knocking current rock, I'm just saying you guys have the sound that's just, like you said, it's live in the studio, and it definitely sounds like, that I could almost sound like way on stage.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the goal is to make a great sounding record, and then when people come see it live, that we exceed that expectation, but yeah, really the only thing I might overdub a guitar solo if I'm not happy with the original take or whatever. If I feel like I can do better, we'll go in and maybe fix a couple vocal lines if necessary, or we may re-sing a whole vocal or something like that. But rhythm guitar, bass, and drums, keyboards usually is always done all at the same time. And if I get a good enough solo the first time, then we'll keep that too. The vocals great, we'll keep that. I mean, Blue on Black, our biggest hit, that was Noah's original vocal take, like
Wow.
when we were just tracking the song.
Yeah.
And we had him sing it several times after that, but it never beat the original scratch vocal. So but the horns we do after the fact. It's a little challenging to do horns at the same time that you're trying to track drums and things like that, just for lead over reasons. But yeah, I would say 80% of what we do is we do live together.
What's the biggest things you're doing, I guess, production wise, from the Blue on Black, or even the album before that, from '95 to now? Like, what do you like? Oh man, I could do this in the studio, or what is there new tricks that you're still learning that in the recording process or on guitar?
Nah, there's new things to be learned, but a lot of them just have to do with tricks that the engineer knows how to do, or like things you can do in Pro Tools, that it feels like cheating, which we try and steer clear from as much as possible.
Were you always digital, or did you record an analog in the 90s?
No, my first album was 100% tape. It was before Pro Tools existed. So my whole first album, Ledbetter Heights, was pre Pro Tools. So there was no computer, all tape. Then the second album, Trouble Is, in 97, by the time we recorded that record, Pro Tools, the very first version of Pro Tools had come out, but it was still like the Wild West and people trying to figure out, its purpose and how to use it. So we simultaneously did tape and used Pro Tools. And so not everything went through the computer. We really used it primarily for editing purposes because it made editing so much faster because you have to cut tape and things like that.
Like if you got to relay down a track or something.
Yeah. And just about every record that I've done since then, we've done some combination of 2-inch tape and Pro Tools.
Yeah. You did a cover on this album, and I know occasionally you do some covers, which I always loved your cover of I Don't Live Today. But Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting, this, which I think fits the album perfectly. How did you just decide to put that on there? And I guess you got some kudos from one of Elton John's guys, huh?
Well, no, I called him and told him I was going to cut it because he's a friend of mine, Davey Johnson, and the guitar player, and I admire him tremendously as a person and as a musician. So I don't even know if he remembers this conversation because it was a few years ago, actually, that we went in the studio and recorded that cover song. But I was like, hey, man, I think we're going to take a pass at your song. And I hope I don't screw it up. Like at one point I was considering asking him to come in and play the part because then I knew it would be right and I wouldn't make any mistakes, But anyway, we went and did it. I mean, I have a running list in my phone and in the back of my mind of cover songs, that I'll hear a song and it'll strike me as a song that I think we could do a good version of, and I just keep a list going, and that was on the list, and I whipped it out, and it just so happened, it was coincidence that it's coming out now because, like I said, we recorded that cover a few years ago.
Yeah.
And just kind of been just sitting there, and I was like, well, it's a great version of that song, but now he's doing his farewell tour and kind of doing his final thing as an artist, and so I thought, it'd be a good timing to really throw this out there and show our appreciation for him and what a great artist he is and was.
Yeah, well, it sounds great. Yeah, Dirt on My Diamonds Volume 1 coming out November 17th. I know we're gonna hear some of that when you come to the Sandler Center in October. That's gonna be great. I do get one question because you talked about playing with legends. You got to tour with Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes.
Yeah.
Tour that got cut too early for reasons whatever the Robinson brothers were doing at the time. But what was that like? I mean, because just playing with those, you didn't play with them, but you got to open for them.
I was just talking with somebody about this a week or two ago, and ironically enough, and they mentioned that the tour got cut short. I don't remember that. It felt, I'm sure it did. I'd like to know how long that tour actually lasted because we did the whole tour. But to me, in my mind, it felt like it was at least a month long, right? But maybe it was shorter than that. But yeah, they mentioned, oh yeah, the tour got cut short. I don't remember that, but it does. It was a long time ago, but it was cool. I mean, I love the Black Crowes as a band. I love, that sound that they make,
Yeah.
And then obviously Jimmy Page. So I thought it was a pretty cool lineup, the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Band and Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes, and it did really well. It was a lot of fun being part of that.
Yeah, it was a great tour. It was the first time I got to see you in concert, man. That was like, holy crap, just watching you play. It's just, I knew you could play, but when you see it live, it's just like, oh, wow. Yeah, that dude's good. Yeah. There's always guys who want to make artists pick up a guitar, and then watching you play is go, yeah, I can't do that. I'm not going to play guitar.
That's all, man. It's not a competition.
No, but watching you, it's just like, yeah, I'll watch a guy do that. I can't do that. So, and it's always a pleasure watching you play, and looking forward to you coming to the Sandler Center on Tuesday, October 10th.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, good luck with the tour. Good luck with the album. Kenny Wayne Shepherd, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.